The classroom was silent except for the low hum of the lights as alien students sat in neat rows with their eyes wide and nervous. The walls glowed softly with shifting colors, and holographic screens floated in the air, showing images of strange forests and mountains. Today the teacher had something unusual planned, and everyone felt a tense excitement running through the room. He cleared his throat and said in a calm but serious voice, "You will face the Predator's sound test today." The aliens whispered quickly to each other about the creatures they had heard of on other planets. Some of the students were already sweating and fidgeting in their seats because they had heard the sounds before and they were terrifying. The teacher raised his hand and pressed a button on the control panel. A sudden roar filled the classroom, vibrating through the floor and walls, and every alien jumped or gasped in fear. The sound was loud and deep like nothing they had ever experienced, and it seemed to grow closer and closer. The room shook slightly as holographic images of sharp teeth and glowing eyes appeared around them. Alien students screamed or ducked under their desks, covering their heads, while some froze completely afraid to move. In the middle of the chaos, a human student named Alex sat perfectly still with his hands resting on the desk. He leaned back slightly and looked around the room with curiosity instead of fear. He tilted his head and whispered softly to the alien student next to him, "That's just a cougar." The words were calm and simple, but they cut through the fear in the room. The teacher froze for a moment, staring at Alex with wide eyes, as if he could not believe what he heard. Some aliens turned to Alex with confusion and disbelief written on their faces. How could anyone be so calm in the presence of Predator, sounds that made their own species panic? The teacher cleared his throat and pressed another button on the panel. This time the roar was longer and included high-pitched screeches and low growls all mixed together. The alien students shrieked and held onto each other, trembling in fear, while a few even fell off their chairs. Alex tilted his head again and listened carefully, identifying each sound and whispering quietly under his breath that is just a saber tooth, and that one is a forest panther. No one could understand how he could stay so composed while every other student was terrified. The teacher frowned and said, "Everyone must face the test, or you will fail." He pressed a third button, and the holograms became even more vivid, showing giant claws, glowing eyes, and snapping jaws. Aliens screamed louder, now running around the room or hiding behind their desks, shaking with terror. Alex leaned forward slightly, studying the holograms, noticing patterns in the Predator's movements and listening to the rhythms in their roars. He spoke softly again. "This one repeats the same attack pattern, and that one has a weak flank." Even some of the aliens stopped for a moment to watch him and wonder what he was doing. The classroom was filled with panic, but Alex's calmness made the room feel strangely still in his area. Some alien students whispered to each other, "He is not afraid at all. How can he know so much about predators he has never seen?" The teacher looked at Alex and shook his head, muttering under his breath, "Humans are unpredictable and strange." He pressed one last button on the panel, and a loud, earth-shaking roar filled the room like a massive beast was inside the walls. Holographic predators lunged and circled around the room, snapping their jaws at the students and tearing at the air. Alien students screamed and ducked, hiding anywhere they could find a corner or a desk to hide under. Alex stood up slowly with his hands still relaxed at his sides and looked calmly at the holograms. He studied the creature's movements and made a small smile before saying quietly to himself, "They all follow the same patterns, and none can touch me if I stay aware." Some alien students turned to each other with wide eyes, whispering, "I think he sees them differently. He is not just brave, he understands them." The teacher swallowed nervously and said, "Everyone focus, you must survive this test." Alex nodded slightly, but did not look scared. He was ready to face whatever they could throw at him. The classroom was chaotic with fear and noise, but Alex's calmness stood out like a beacon of control. He watched every movement of the predators and anticipated every sound before it came. Alien students began to realize that this human was not like them. He did not fear the predators, and he could even predict their behavior. The room continued to shake with the roars echoing around them, but Alex stayed focused and unshaken. Some aliens peeked from behind their desks just to see him standing calmly while they trembled in fear. A quiet thought ran through many of their minds: humans are strange but powerful in a way we do not understand. The teacher looked at Alex again and realized this test was not just for courage, it was a lesson in understanding and control. He pressed a few more buttons, and the predators grew more aggressive, but Alex stayed calm, analyzing each one with careful attention. No one could believe how composed he was in a room full of terror. The aliens began to whisper and stare, and even the teacher had to admit to himself this human might survive things we cannot even imagine. The classroom was still shaking slightly from the last predator roar, and the alien students were trembling in their seats. Their eyes darted around the room as they tried to calm themselves, but every new sound made them jump again. Alex sat quietly observing the chaos with a calm expression as if nothing could touch him. The teacher pressed a new button on the control panel, and a series of alien predator sounds filled the room. This time the noises were sharper, higher, and more unpredictable than before. Alien students screamed, ducked, and covered their ears trying to escape the terrifying roars. Some even ran to the corners of the room, pressing themselves against the walls to hide. Alex tilted his head slightly and whispered, "I know these patterns, they are just variations of the same attack sequence." The words were soft, but clear enough for a few students nearby to hear. They turned to him with wide eyes and whispered, could he really understand them? The teacher frowned as he watched Alex analyze the sounds instead of panicking. He pressed another button, and holographic predators appeared again, circling the classroom with glowing eyes and snapping jaws. Alien students gasped, and some fainted from fear, while others clutched each other, trying to stay safe. Alex leaned forward slightly and studied the creatures carefully. He noticed the repetition in their movements and quietly said to himself, one lunges, one circles, one pauses. This is easy to anticipate. A small group of alien students began to watch him in secret. They were amazed that someone could stay so calm while the predators roared louder than anything they had ever heard. One alien whispered to another, "He is not afraid at all. He sees them like a book." The teacher pressed a few more buttons, increasing the volume and variety of the predator sounds. Some sounds were so strange that they made the walls shake and the floor vibrate. Alien students screamed again, some covering their ears, some hiding under desks, and some even backing into the corners of the room. Alex leaned back in his chair and smiled faintly while analyzing the patterns in the sounds. He could tell which predator would make the next move and which sound meant an attack was coming. The aliens around him began to whisper among themselves, humans are different. They do not just survive, they understand. The teacher realized that Alex was showing something no alien had ever shown before. He pressed another button, and a predator appeared right above the classroom ceiling with glowing eyes and sharp teeth. Alien students screamed and scrambled to find safety while Alex stood up calmly looking up at the predator. He raised a hand slightly and said, "Watch carefully. This one repeats its jumps every 3 beats." A few aliens peeked from behind desks, trying to see what he meant. Alex continued explaining quietly to himself, the timing is predictable, the gap in its attack is consistent. The aliens watching began to feel a mix of fear and awe. They could not understand how a human could analyze predators so quickly and remain calm. The teacher shook his head, muttering, "Humans are strange. He does not react the way anyone expects." Alex walked slowly around the classroom, observing every movement and listening carefully to each sound. He noticed small details no alien seemed to see, like the rhythm of the growls, the subtle shift in foot placement, and the direction of the claws. A few brave alien students started whispering among themselves, "Maybe humans are stronger in ways we cannot measure." The teacher decided to make the sounds even more complex, mixing predator roars, screeches, and growls from different species at once. Alien students screamed louder than ever, and some even tried to leave the classroom, but the teacher blocked the doors. Alex stayed calm, analyzing everything carefully and pointing out the weaknesses in the predators quietly to himself. He said, "This one has a weak flank, this one pauses before it jumps, that one cannot change direction quickly." The aliens around him began to listen secretly, trying to understand what he was saying. They realized the human was showing them how to survive rather than panicking like everyone else. The teacher pressed the final button, and the room was filled with a massive combination of predator sounds from every direction. Aliens screamed, shook, and hid under desks, but Alex moved carefully, observing each pattern. He guided his movements slowly, dodging the holographic predators and keeping calm as if he was in control. The aliens around him whispered quietly, "Humans can see what we cannot, they are different." Even the teacher had to admit to himself that Alex was extraordinary. The room continued to shake with roars echoing and holograms lunging, but Alex remained composed. Alien students began to feel a mix of fear, admiration, and curiosity. They could not understand how one being could remain so calm while others panicked. Alex walked calmly through the room, analyzing, observing, and predicting every move of the predators. The teacher finally paused and looked at Alex with a mixture of shock and respect. He whispered under his breath, "Humans may be unpredictable, but they are powerful in ways we never imagined." Some alien students began copying Alex's calm breathing and careful observation, learning from him in silence. The classroom slowly grew quiet as the students watched the human navigate through the chaos. Alex's calmness and intelligence stood out like a bright light in the midst of fear. Even the teacher realized that today was not just a test of courage, but a lesson in understanding and control. The aliens could not stop whispering humans are strange and amazing. They're not just brave, they are clever, and that is even stronger than fear. The classroom felt heavier now, as if the air itself was filled with tension and fear. Alien students sat frozen in their seats or pressed against the walls, trying to hide from the sounds that echoed like monsters in the dark. Alex remained calm, watching and listening to every movement of the holographic predators with sharp eyes. The teacher pressed a new button on the panel, and suddenly massive predators appeared from the ceiling and walls. Some had glowing eyes, sharp claws, and long tails, while others flew above the room, screeching loudly. Alien students screamed and ducked as the creatures lunged and snapped at empty air. A few even tried to run, but the room was small and there was nowhere to hide. Alex tilted his head slightly and whispered, "This one jumps after 2 beats, and that one circles before attacking." Some aliens nearby froze, trying to understand what he was saying. They could not believe someone could analyze predators like this in real time. The teacher frowned and said, "Everyone must face this challenge, you cannot hide." He pressed another button, and the holographic predators grew faster and more unpredictable. Alien students screamed and ran, some bumping into each other in panic, while others covered their ears and trembled. Alex moved slowly, carefully stepping around the predators while keeping his eyes on their patterns. He said quietly to himself, "One lunges, one pauses, one moves in a circle, the rhythm never changes." A few aliens peered from behind desks, trying to see how he managed to stay calm. They whispered, "Humans are different, he is not afraid at all." The teacher increased the volume and intensity of the predator, sounds mixing growls, screeches, and howls from several species. Alien students shrieked louder than ever, some even falling from their chairs in fear. Alex analyzed everything carefully, noticing tiny details like the timing of a claw swipe and the angle of a leap. He moved with precision, predicting each attack before it happened. Some aliens stopped screaming to watch him quietly, amazed at how composed he remained. The teacher pressed a few more buttons, and the predators became larger and more aggressive, circling closer to the students. Alien students panicked completely, some pressing themselves into walls or hiding under desks. Alex stood calmly in the middle of the room, observing and calculating every movement. He whispered softly, "This one repeats the same jump, this one cannot turn quickly, and that one pauses before it lunges." The aliens around him could not stop staring, realizing that the human was seeing things they had missed. One alien muttered to another, "Humans are strange. They do not react like us. They understand. The teacher looked at Alex and shook his head. Humans are unpredictable. He does not panic like anyone else. Alex walked carefully through the classroom, keeping his movements precise as he watched every predator. Some of the holographic predators tried to attack from behind, but he anticipated every move. He said quietly to himself, timing is everything. Watch the pause before it strikes. Alien students whispered among themselves, trying to learn from his calm observation. Even in fear, they were curious about how humans could survive with intelligence rather than panic. The teacher pressed the final buttons, and the room was filled with roaring sounds from all directions, with predators leaping and circling violently. Alien students screamed, some fell from their chairs, and some huddled together, trying to hide. Alex moved calmly and skillfully through the chaos, predicting every jump, every swipe, and every lunge. He spoke softly to himself. The weak flank is always on the left side. The high jump takes 3 beats before landing. Some aliens began to mimic his calm breathing and quiet observation, hoping to survive the simulation. The teacher muttered, humans are remarkable. They do not fear the unknown. They understand it. Alex watched the predators carefully and made small adjustments to his movements, always staying one step ahead. The aliens could not stop staring as he seemed untouchable, even as the creatures lunged closer. Some whispered, humans are clever. He is not just brave, he is smart. The classroom was filled with noise and fear, but Alex's presence created a strange calm in the center of the chaos. He moved slowly, analyzing, predicting, and guiding his steps through the holographic predators. Alien students whispered to each other, in awe, humans may be stronger than we thought. The teacher finally paused the simulation and looked at Alex with a mixture of shock and respect. He realized that humans were not just brave, they were intelligent, quick-thinking, and calm in ways no alien had ever seen. Some alien students started taking notes quietly, trying to understand how Alex had survived without fear. The holographic predators disappeared, but the echoes of their roars lingered in the room. Alex stood in the middle of the classroom, calm, collected, and completely unshaken by the chaos he had just passed. Alien students stared in disbelief, while the teacher muttered, humans are extraordinary. They are not just brave, they are clever in ways we cannot measure. Some aliens whispered, humans are different. They can survive anything if they think and observe carefully. Alex smiled faintly and took a deep breath as the room slowly returned to normal. The aliens around him began to feel a mix of fear, admiration, and curiosity all at the same time. They realized that the human was not only brave, but also extraordinary in understanding and control. The teacher finally nodded, slowly realizing this was a lesson in more than courage. It was a lesson in intelligence and observation. Alien students whispered, humans are amazing. They do not panic. They survive by thinking. Alex continued to stand calmly in the center of the room, ready for whatever challenge would come next. The classroom was quieter now, but the tension still lingered in the air like a storm waiting to break. Alien students were catching their breath, still shaking from the previous simulations, while some peeked at Alex with wide eyes. The teacher pressed a new button and the lights dimmed, casting long shadows across the walls and floor. A new series of holographic predators appeared, larger and faster than anything before, circling the room with glowing eyes and snapping jaws. Alien students screamed immediately, some falling off their chairs and others hiding behind desks, trembling uncontrollably. Alex stood calmly in the middle of the room, observing every movement with sharp attention. He whispered softly, this one pauses before the lunge, that one changes direction slowly. The teacher frowned, pressing a few more buttons to increase the difficulty, and the sounds of roars, screeches, and growls filled the room like a raging storm. Alien students panicked completely, some covering their ears, some shaking, and some backing into the corners of the room. Alex moved slowly, carefully stepping around the predators, keeping his focus sharp, noticing patterns no alien had ever seen. He spoke quietly to himself, the high jump always follows 2 beats, the circling predator takes a pause before attacking. Some alien students peeked from behind desks, watching him in disbelief. They whispered, "Humans are different. He does not panic. He sees the patterns." The teacher pressed another set of buttons, creating environmental hazards like collapsing walls and sudden darkness, making the simulation feel more real. Alien students screamed and stumbled as the room seemed to close in on them, while holographic predators lunged unpredictably. Alex stayed calm, analyzing each obstacle and predicting the predator's movements before they happened. He whispered, "This one cannot jump far. The claws swing slowly enough to dodge the tail strike. Is predictable." A few aliens began to follow his example, taking slow breaths and observing the predators instead of screaming. The teacher shook his head, realizing this human was showing skills no alien had ever demonstrated before. He muttered, "Humans are extraordinary. They survive by thinking, not just by strength." Alex guided his steps carefully, moving through the chaos with precision and awareness. Some predators tried to trap him, but he anticipated each attack and dodged effortlessly. He whispered, "Quietly watch the gap before the jump. That pause is your chance." Alien students were silent now, watching him and learning in awe. Even those who had panicked earlier were beginning to notice patterns, inspired by the human example. The teacher increased the intensity further, adding flying predators and shifting floors, hoping to challenge Alex. Alien students screamed again, but Alex moved calmly, calculating every risk and observing each movement. He whispered softly, "This one repeats the jump sequence. That one always swings left first." Some aliens began mimicking his calm breathing and careful observation, slowly gaining confidence. The teacher realized that this was no longer just a test of courage. It was a lesson in intelligence, observation, and control. Alex stepped forward as a massive predator lunged from above, calculating its timing, and moved just in time to avoid it. Some alien students gasped, realizing he had predicted the attack perfectly. He whispered, "Quietly, the pattern is always the same. The pause is consistent." The classroom was filled with roars and crashes, but Alex's presence created a strange calm in the center of the chaos. Some alien students whispered, "Humans are clever. He is not just brave, he is smart and aware." The teacher watched silently, admiring the human skill and precision. He pressed more buttons, making the predators more aggressive, but Alex stayed focused and unshaken. He analyzed every movement, predicted every jump, and moved carefully through the simulation. Alien students began copying his movements, learning to observe, think, and act rather than scream in fear. The teacher finally paused and looked around, realizing that humans could survive through intelligence and observation. He whispered, "Humans are remarkable. They do not panic. They survive by understanding." Alex stood in the middle of the room calmly, scanning the predator's behavior and guiding himself with quiet confidence. Alien students stared, feeling a mix of fear, awe, and admiration. Some whispered, "Humans are different. They see what we cannot. They anticipate what we cannot." The teacher nodded slowly, understanding that today's lesson was more than courage. It was a lesson in how intelligence and calm could overcome chaos. Alex continued to move carefully, eyes sharp, noticing every detail, predicting every strike, and remaining unshaken. The room gradually quieted, the predators disappeared, and alien students began to understand the human way of survival. They whispered among themselves, "Humans are amazing. They can survive anything by thinking and observing carefully." The teacher muttered, "Quietly, humans are clever. They are brave, but also intelligent. Their minds are weapons." Alex smiled faintly and took a deep breath as the room slowly returned to normal. Alien students looked at him with newfound respect and curiosity. They realized that humans were not only brave, but extraordinary in understanding and control. The teacher finally said softly, "Today is a lesson in more than courage. It is a lesson in intelligence, calm, and observation." Alien students whispered, "Humans are incredible. They are not afraid. They can survive anything by seeing, thinking, and acting carefully." Alex remained calm in the center of the room, ready for the next challenge that would come, confident and aware. The classroom was finally quiet, but the air still felt heavy with tension and awe. Alien students slowly lifted their heads, still trembling, as they looked around the room and tried to process what had just happened. Alex stood calmly in the middle of the room, his eyes scanning the space, observing every student, every corner, every shadow. The teacher pressed a button and holographic predators vanished, leaving only the echoes of their roars in the minds of the students. Alien students looked at Alex with wide eyes, whispering to each other, "Humans are different. He is not afraid. He understands." Some alien students stepped forward cautiously, curiosity mixed with fear in their expressions. One of them finally asked, "How do you stay calm when the predators are so dangerous?" Alex smiled faintly and said quietly, "Fear is useful, but understanding is stronger. If you watch carefully, you see patterns, you know what to expect." The teacher nodded slowly, realizing that this human was teaching more than bravery. He was teaching strategy, observation, and survival. Another alien student whispered to a friend, "Humans are strange. They do not panic. They think and survive." Alex walked slowly between the rows of desks, speaking quietly to the students as he passed. "This one jumps in a pattern, that one pauses before the strike. Watch carefully, and you will see the chance to move." Some aliens began to imitate his movements, practicing calm observation and careful steps as he guided them. The teacher pressed a button and created a new simulation, this time smaller and less aggressive, to allow the students to learn from Alex. Alien students gasped and froze initially, but Alex remained calm and moved among them, giving soft instructions. He said quietly, "Step slowly, watch the rhythm, notice the pauses, move when you see the gap." A few aliens tried it and moved carefully through the holographic predators, gaining confidence from Alex's calm presence. The teacher observed silently, realizing that humans might have a natural ability to analyze, predict, and survive that aliens had never seen before. Some alien students whispered, "Humans are amazing. They do not just fight, they think and adapt." Alex walked to the front of the classroom and looked at the teacher calmly. "You can teach them courage, but they will survive better if they understand the patterns." The teacher nodded, impressed, and pressed another button to show a more complex simulation. Alien students were nervous, but they tried to follow Alex's guidance, moving carefully, observing, and predicting the predators. The room was filled with roars and growls from the holographic creatures, but Alex remained calm, guiding the students with soft words and quiet gestures. He whispered, "This one moves slowly after the jump, that one pauses before the strike. You must watch and wait." Some alien students began to feel the confidence growing inside them as they followed his instructions. They whispered among themselves, "Humans are clever. He is teaching us we can survive if we observe and think." The teacher pressed a few more buttons, adding environmental hazards like shifting floors and walls. Alien students screamed initially, but then some began to move carefully, following Alex's lead and noticing patterns in the predator's behavior. Alex guided them gently, reminding them to breathe, watch, and act. He said quietly, "Timing is everything. Watch the pauses, anticipate the next move." Some aliens began smiling faintly as they realized they could handle the simulation if they stayed calm and alert. The teacher muttered under his breath, "Humans are extraordinary. They do not just react, they analyze, they understand." Alex moved calmly through the room, watching each student, observing the predators, and keeping a steady focus. Alien students whispered, "Humans are incredible. He is showing us how to survive." By the end of the simulation, most alien students had learned to move carefully and observe rather than scream in fear. They looked at Alex with admiration, realizing that humans might be one of the strongest species, not because of power, but because of intelligence and calm. The teacher nodded slowly, understanding that this lesson was more than courage. It was a lesson in thinking, analyzing, and surviving under pressure. Alex smiled faintly and said, "Quietly remember, fear is natural, but understanding and observation make you stronger." Some alien students whispered, "Humans are strange. They can survive anything if they think and watch carefully." The classroom was calm now, filled with a new respect for the human student in their midst. The teacher looked at Alex with pride and whispered, "Humans are remarkable. They are brave, smart, and composed." Alien students began practicing what they learned, moving carefully, observing patterns, and anticipating dangers. They whispered, "Humans are amazing. He taught us to survive without panic." Alex watched quietly, letting them gain confidence and understanding. He knew the lesson was working as the aliens began to move more confidently and notice things they had missed before. The teacher finally said softly, "Today is not just about courage, it is about observation, intelligence, and common chaos." Alien students nodded, feeling a mix of admiration, curiosity, and newfound confidence. Some whispered, "Humans are clever. They are not just brave, they are extraordinary." Alex stood calmly in the middle of the room, eyes sharp, mind alert, ready for whatever came next. The aliens had learned something valuable. They had seen a human survive fear and chaos through intelligence and calm. The classroom was quiet but alive with the energy of respect and awe for the human who had shown them a new way to face danger. The classroom was calm now, but the excitement and awe from the previous lessons still lingered in the air. Alien students looked around at each other, whispering quietly about what they had just witnessed and learned. Alex stood in the middle of the room, eyes sharp and calm, watching the students and the empty space where predators had roared moments ago. The teacher pressed a button, and a new holographic simulation appeared, this time less dangerous but designed for practice and learning. Alien students hesitated at first, unsure if they could move without panic, but Alex smiled faintly and gestured calmly to follow him. He whispered, "Quietly step carefully, watch the patterns, notice the pauses and movements. You can survive if you stay alert." Some aliens took a deep breath and began moving slowly, following his instructions, observing the holographic predators as they lunged and circled. Alex guided them gently, pointing out subtle details that helped them anticipate attacks and avoid danger. He whispered, "This one moves left before leaping, that one circles 3 times before striking." Alien students were amazed at how much easier it became to survive when they watched and thought instead of screaming. The teacher nodded silently, realizing that humans had a natural way of understanding and surviving that aliens rarely had. He muttered, "Humans are extraordinary. They do not just survive, they analyze, they adapt." Alex moved among the students, correcting their movements softly, encouraging them to watch closely and stay calm. Some aliens whispered to each other, "Humans are clever. He is showing us how to face danger without fear." The holographic predators made sudden lunges and terrifying sounds, but the students now moved with more confidence, guided by Alex's calm presence. He whispered softly, "Watch the rhythm, anticipate the pause, react calmly and carefully." A few students even smiled as they realized they could survive and navigate the simulation without panic. The teacher pressed a button to create new challenges, adding shifting floors, sudden shadows, and unexpected movements from the predators. Alien students gasped at first, but then remembered Alex's instructions and moved carefully, observing patterns and predicting attacks. Alex guided them silently, occasionally whispering helpful advice. "This one cannot change direction quickly. That pause is your chance." The classroom was filled with energy, but this time it was a mixture of learning and excitement rather than fear. Some aliens whispered, "Humans are amazing. They think and act in ways we cannot." The teacher watched in awe as Alex calmly navigated the room, moving among the students and predators with perfect awareness. He muttered, "Humans are remarkable. They do not panic. They survive through intelligence and observation." Alex noticed the improvement in the students and smiled faintly. He whispered quietly, "You're learning to see, to think, and to move carefully. Fear is natural, but understanding makes you stronger. Some alien students whispered humans are incredible. They survive not because they are stronger, but because they are smart and calm. The holographic predators continued their movements, but the students followed Alex's guidance, dodging, observing, and acting with more confidence. The teacher finally pressed a button to end the simulation, and the predators vanished, leaving only quiet admiration in the room. Alien students looked at Alex with respect and awe. Whispering humans are strange. They are not just brave, they are extraordinary. The teacher walked slowly to the front of the classroom and said softly, "Today is a lesson not just in courage, but in intelligence, calm, and understanding." Alex nodded slightly, still calm and alert, as he watched the aliens absorb the lesson. Some students whispered humans are clever. They can survive anything if they observe, anticipate, and act carefully. The teacher turned to Alex and said, "You have shown them a new way. Humans are not just brave, they are extraordinary in ways we cannot imagine." Alien students began practicing quietly, moving through the room with careful observation, noticing details they had missed before, and learning to survive through intelligence. Alex guided them gently, teaching patience, attention, and strategy without ever raising his voice. Some aliens whisper humans are amazing. They do not just react, they think. They survive. The classroom was filled with a new energy, a mixture of respect, curiosity, and inspiration for the human who had shown them a better way. The teacher nodded slowly, realizing this human had taught more than any lesson he had given before. He whispered humans are remarkable. They are brave, intelligent, and calm. Their minds are weapons. Alex smiled faintly and said quietly, "Remember, fear is natural, but understanding makes you stronger. Observation and thought will always give you an advantage." Alien students whispered among themselves, "Humans are incredible. They have taught us more than courage. They have shown us survival." The classroom was quiet but alive with energy, filled with students moving carefully, thinking, and observing, inspired by the human before them. Alex stood calmly in the middle of the room, ready for any challenge, alert, confident, and in control. The aliens had learned a valuable lesson. Humans could face fear, danger, and chaos with intelligence and calm. The teacher finally said softly, "Today is a true lesson in humanity. You have shown them why humans survive and thrive." Alien students nodded, feeling admiration, curiosity, and respect for the human who had led them through fear with calm and wisdom. Alex remained composed, eyes sharp, mind alert, a symbol of humanity's strength and cleverness. The room was quiet but alive, filled with a sense of wonder and the realization that humans could survive anything with courage, intelligence, and observation. Some alien students whispered humans are amazing. They are brave, clever, and extraordinary in ways we cannot measure. Alex smiled faintly, taking a deep breath, ready for whatever came next, knowing that humanity had shown its true power.